The Philippines runs on an energy supply chain that it barely controls. An incredible 95% of the country's oil is shipped in from overseas. That exposure was locked into place in 1998 when the government passed an oil deregulation law. This legislation completely handed over the responsibility of fuel supply and pricing to the private market. By doing so, the state surrendered its power to step in and dictate prices at the pump, regardless of how volatile the global market gets. Without a state buffer to absorb the shocks, ordinary citizens face the immediate financial impact of every single global supply chain disruption. The national grid is structurally fragile. A conflict thousands of miles away translates directly into a crisis at the local gas station. That exact scenario is playing out right now. The recent conflict in Iran has triggered a severe, sudden supply shock across the globe. The threat to the country's energy supply became so acute that on March 24th, President Marcos Jr. officially declared a national energy emergency. This shows why the alarm was raised. Diesel is projected to hit 160 pesos per liter, while the daily minimum wage in the capital sits at 695 pesos. A single liter of fuel devours a quarter of a worker's daily earnings. You can see the desperation playing out on the streets of Quezon City. People are actively crowding into shops, looking for electric bikes and scooters to avoid the gas pumps altogether. Commuting to work has instantly transitioned from a basic daily routine into an unaffordable luxury. Consider motoring journalist James Deacon. He recently posted a photo of his fuel receipt online after paying over 4,000 pesos, about $67, just to top off his tank. He asked his followers, "What's your breaking point?" Drivers are hitting a wall of absolute financial exhaustion, abandoning long-held brand loyalties simply to find relief. This graph lays out the stark reality provided by the Department of Energy. Running a standard gas-powered car costs around 5 pesos per kilometer. An EV runs at a flat 1.75 pesos. Financial survival has replaced environmental concern as the primary driver of the nation's electric transition. The numbers reflect that desperation. In just the first 2 months of 2026, electric vehicle sales shot up by 66% compared to the previous year. Regional automakers are watching this data closely, recognizing that a vulnerable consumer base represents a massive market opening. Vietnam's VinFast is moving aggressively to capture these drivers. They introduced highly affordable models like the VF3, priced around $12,400, explicitly targeting the squeezed middle class. They even launched a Trade Gas for Electric program, offering a direct 3% discount on electric cars and 5% off scooters for anyone willing to ditch their petrol vehicle. Foreign companies are stepping in where domestic policy cannot, turning an acute national crisis into trackable, accelerating consumer demand. Despite this sudden momentum, the Philippines has a massive amount of ground to make up when you look at the rest of Southeast Asia. This visualization highlights the gap. Last year, electric vehicles accounted for just 12% of new car sales in the Philippines. Meanwhile, neighbors like Vietnam and Singapore have already crossed the 40% threshold. Those nations have spent years developing the robust, electrified transit infrastructure that Manila is now desperately scrambling to build. The current oil shock is acting as a brute force accelerant, forcing the country to compress years of gradual market adoption into a few frantic months. Without the crushing pressure of these record fuel costs, the country would have likely remained miles behind its regional peers in the transition to electric transit. Even if the conflict in the Middle East eventually stabilizes and oil prices cool down, the consumer behavior we are seeing right now is likely permanent. Drivers have experienced the harsh reality of relying on an imported commodity. The collective search for cost-predictable mobility has permanently changed what people expect from their cars and their city's infrastructure. While the energy crisis exposed a dangerous reliance on foreign oil, it simultaneously provided the blunt force pressure needed to jumpstart a long-stalled transition to electric transport.